Hey, what's up everybody? Ollie from flightcomp back again for another build series of videos. I'm working on the CCM Toy. So this is the 2-meter slope glider from the Ukraine. And I've already done a kind of an intro and overview video, but this is going to be part one of the build series. And I'm getting started with the fuselage, putting in the servos and the tray for the V-tail. This is the 3D printed servo tray, and I must say it fits these KST X08s really well. Now on first glance this looks like a parallel sided tray, but it actually does taper, and the front part is the side with the CCM logo. So this is a little narrower than the back side, which says Toy on it. So in preparation, I have scuffed up the sides that get glued in to the fuselage. You can see this thing is tapered. So this is 3D modeled in the computer to match the fuselage shape pretty well. And it has these sort of like bulkheads here. And these basically sit on the bottom of the fuselage. And what I've started to do is just notch the bulkheads. I've done two. I'm going to do the third one here. And that's just so that when I put it inside the fuselage and I install it, I can put the battery up front and run the battery wire underneath the servo tray back to the receiver. The receiver will probably sit in here somewhere. And I have also sanded the fuselage slightly where it's going to bond. So I'm going to move forward with installing this, and I will try to get some measurements as far as how far forward or back this is. You just want to install it level, and basically it's going to sit on the bottom of the fuselage. So the only real adjustment you need is the forward and back. Make sure you have enough room for a battery and to squeeze your receiver in here. So let me get on with it. All right, moving along with the Toy 2-meter build. I have the servo tray epoxied in to the fuselage. As you can see here, I used some slow curing epoxy with some Cabosil mixed in to make a nice fillet. And from this point right here to right here on the canopy is 30 millimeters. So from here to here, 30 millimeters. And that gives you plenty of space to put a receiver in here and enough room for a battery. I'm probably going to go with a 2-cell life battery, around maybe 800 milliamps or so. Or you could use obviously a LiPo if you want. So now we're going to get to the point where we're going to hook up the push rods for the V-tails. I'm using the single-sided arms that come with the KST servos, and I'm using the second hole out. So pretty short arms, and these are the clevises and couplers included with the kit, as you can see. And on this guy here, I've already drilled the hole with a 16th inch drill bit for the clevis pin, and I've grinded the clevis out here to get some relief when the arm travels that way, as you can see. So we can use a shorter arm and use as much of the travel as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and drill this arm and grind this clevis out. I'll trim down the horns, and then we can move on to gluing the couplers onto the carbon push rods in here. Well, the servos are now in place. They fit very well into the servo tray, as you can see here. Now I'm going to basically cut the push rods so I can glue them into the couplers. And I have marked where I need to cut with a little bit of silver ink. I'm just going to cut these. I've marked both sides. There's a little bit of silver ink there too. I'm going to cut these and then glue them into the couplers, and you can see I've trimmed down the servo horns, and then on the tail I have just taped the elevators in the neutral position, and obviously we're hooked up on this end with the ball links. And one change I've made is I'm not going to use the couplers that came with the kit. These look to be like 3mm, maybe 2.5mm couplers, and these carbon rods are probably, I didn't measure them, but they're 1.8 or 2mm carbon rods, probably 1.8. And I found some brass MP jet couplers in my parts drawer that fit these perfectly. If you need some of these brass couplers, you can go to flightcomp.com, go to the metric hardware section, you'll see MP jet, and there's a zillion different kinds of these couplers listed for all different size push rods. So I'm going to cut these, I'm going to scuff up, I'll do a little bit of work on the couplers, and then I'm going to use JB weld and some heat shrink tubing and get these all done up. Servos are now installed and in place, and the push rods are all hooked up. As you can see, I have actually used just CA or super glue to glue the carbon rod into the brass coupler. I did scuff up the outside of the coupler a little bit, and of course scuff the carbon rod, and put the glue on the carbon, pushed them in place. And then after that CA was dry, I put a JB weld, I should say, over the brass and the carbon, and slipped this piece of shrink tube on and shrunk it down a little bit. So it's kind of a dual layer of adhesive going on here. Those should be very secure. Same thing happening on this side. There's the notch in the clevis. These horns seem to be a good length. They could be a little bit shorter. So if you're building one of these, you may consider going a little bit shorter. You're sort of limited with the selection of servo arms that you get from KST. But these will be good. And you can see that the wires are routed underneath in those notches that I cut in the servo tray. So there you go. That about wraps up the fuselage. There's really nothing else to do. Very straightforward, very easy build. Servo tray fits fantastically. These XO8s fit beautifully in the 3D printed tray. Oh, one other thing I did was I made some foam blocks. You can see them right there. Let me see if I can get a light on it so it shows up a little better. Oh, that's an excellent view of it there. Right there you can see I have the same blocks on both sides. This is Roacell foam, and they're just super glued to the fuselage side, and then I super glued the push rod housing in there. You can use balsa or other kinds of foam. If you use other kinds of foam, be careful what adhesive you use, but balsa would work too. And that's just to secure, to secure these push rods a little more and prevent bowing and flexing under load. Yeah, so that wraps it up. That wraps up the fuselage build video, and then we will move on to the wings next. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.